In the 8th year of falling in love with the Yandere, I put on my wedding dress and went on a honeymoon with him. All because of a phone call from my first love. However, he forced me to have an abortion and swore to my first love like a bootlicker, "Except for you, I won't have children with anyone else." And I died of infection due to the dirty and chaotic techniques in a small clinic. After being reborn, when I saw that gloomy teenager again, I resolutely chose to leave. I was reborn back to my sophomore year in college. Today was my day on duty. On a humid and sticky summer evening, Zachary was surrounded by a group of people in the computer room. Several boys were bending his back and using his school uniform to gag his lips. "You little bastard, can't even afford to go to an internet cafe. Is it fun to come here alone?" In my previous life, I happened to pass by here and immediately called the teacher. I rescued him here and bandaged his wounds for him. From then on, I kept showing kindness to Zachary again and again in order to win his favor. I would buy him nice, clean new clothes and bend down to put on sneakers for him. To protect his self-esteem, I often gave him my pocket money so that he could go to the internet cafe to play games. Moreover, Zachary had a face that was especially in line with my aesthetic. He was beautiful and delicate, with a mole of tears at the corner of his eye, tall and slender, and had a lazy yet evil look. Since Zachary was abandoned by his father at birth, his mother was mentally ill, and he was adopted and then abandoned by a wealthy man. He was a typical love-deprived pienchukwa. In the book, he couldn't win the love of the female lead, went crazy over and over again, and begged the female lead for love with blood all over his body, hoping that his sweetheart would take pity on him. When the female lead was in danger, he stepped forward to protect her in his arms and died in the sea. It was a romantic, gorgeous yet lonely life. After having more contact with Zachary, I fell in love with him hopelessly. Every time I tried to win his heart, it was with my true feelings, and my eyes were always on this teenager. The Gongdae system told me that only by staying sober could I get out unscathed in the process of winning his heart. Looking at the real person in front of me, I said seriously and firmly, "I like Zachary, and I'm willing to die for him." However, Zachary still fell in love with the little son in the book, that innocent and lively girl. The gloomy one coveted the person in the light, so Zachary had his heart set on Scarlett. His recklessness left me bruised all over. On the second day after I got engaged to Zachary, I found that I had been pregnant for 3 months. "Zachary, we're having a baby." But Zachary suddenly frowned as he looked at me, and there was nothing but coldness and ruthlessness in his eyes. The call in his hand was still going on, and it was Scarlett's heartbroken voice on the other end. "Zachary. Please, stay with me, okay? Justin doesn't want me anymore. My heart hurts so much now." Scarlett was crying pitifully on the other end. "Aren't we going on our honeymoon tomorrow?" I felt my voice trembling. However, Zachary's eyes were deep, as if he felt sorry for Scarlett. In the end, Zachary left me alone to complete the trip. 3 days later, Zachary came to me looking travel-worn. I was overjoyed and said, "Zachary, you're back? Shall we take the trip again together?" But he looked at me with cold and pitying eyes. After answering the female lead's call again, he couldn't hide his joy. "Scarlett said she wants to be with me. After so many years, I finally waited for this moment. I can't let that thing in your belly ruin my relationship with her." Zachary coldly took me to a small clinic and made me have an abortion. When he had the embryo made into a specimen, his body was shaking, and he obsessively presented it to his first love. He swore to her like a bootlicker, "Except for you, I won't have children with anyone else." And I died of infection due to the dirty and chaotic techniques in the clinic. So this time, I resolutely chose to turn around and walk away. And Zachary in the computer room seemed to have a telepathic connection and instantly raised his head. Fortunately, I had already turned around, and I ran towards the position of Scarlett, the original female lead in the book. "Scarlett, it seems your water cup was left in the computer room." "Really?" Scarlett looked up, and I saw her walking over there. This time, there was no voice of the system in my ear. Well, in this life, I'm going to live for myself. I saw Zachary getting in touch with them early. He walked behind Scarlett with his hands behind his head, and beside Scarlett was Justin, the crown prince of the Beijing circle. The opportunities that belonged solely to the female lead were something I shouldn't have coveted in my previous life. In my previous life, what I did for Zachary, Scarlett did even better. She gave Zachary encouragement, dignity, urged him to study hard, and showed him endless care, revolving around him like a little son. Of course, she also kept a certain distance. "Ava, can I go to your home on the weekend?" Scarlett took the initiative to find me this time. I remembered that in my previous life, Scarlett wanted to learn to play the piano but she didn't have one at home, and she was too embarrassed to go to Justin's home. The opportunities that belonged solely to the female lead were something I shouldn't have coveted in my previous life. In my previous life, what I did for Zachary, Scarlett did even. However, my home became a place for them to laugh and play around, and I was the only outsider. I'll never do things like Zachary taking the cherries from my home to curry favor with Scarlett again. No. I refused, and Scarlett was a bit surprised. After all, before Zachary showed up, I was quite nice to her. Classmate Ava. Zachary had his school uniform loosely tied around his waist and suddenly sat on my desk at this time. His voice was like mint ice water on a summer night, low and hoarse. I couldn't help but shudder all over and my fingers curled up. I raised my eyes and just happened to meet his inquiring gaze. "Can't you come with us?" Zachary kept asking. Scarlett was a bit surprised. Under Scarlett's influence, Zachary was much more outgoing. But he wasn't the type to be very close to people, and it was unexpected that he took the initiative to ask this time. "No, my family has arranged a lot of lessons for me. I can't bring outsiders home, and I don't have time either." Zachary's voice came again, sounding casual. "Just cancel them." I looked at Zachary in disbelief. His tone was actually the same as when he took advantage of me in my previous life. In my previous life, knowing that I liked him, Zachary treated me like a pushover, asking me to coax Scarlett, pass messages for him, take care of Scarlett by the way, help her with her homework, and give her snacks. Whoever wants to be such a sucker can be. "Excuse me, this is my own business. Why should I cancel it for you?" Perhaps my gaze was too strong and fierce, and Zachary actually hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure?" I was calm. "Yes." Just when I was glad that our interactions were getting fewer and fewer in this life, several love letters suddenly appeared on the school's display stand, written to Zachary in my name. I immediately turned pale. After running over, I saw a painting. It was a painting of Zachary on the playground. Before I met Zachary for the first time, I had already been observing him. So in my previous life, before the incident in the computer room, I had painted his portrait, but these love letters were completely fabricated. I didn't expect this kind of thing to happen again. My face flushed red with anger, and Zachary suddenly walked up to me. "So you like me? Why don't you want to have more contact with me? Are you shy?" And Scarlett stood there in a daze, and then ran over and held my hand tightly at this time. "Ava, you should have said it earlier. If you like Zachary, I can play matchmaker for you too." What was ridiculous was that when Scarlett said this, there was actually a bit of sadness between her eyebrows. And Zachary was staring at Scarlett intently, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know that he liked Scarlett. One should have the ability to distinguish right from wrong. I directly turned around and tore off the portrait on the notice board. The love letters weren't written by me, and this painting isn't of him either. Finally, I walked away from them. However, when I pushed open the classroom door, Zachary was suddenly sitting in my seat. And Scarlett was blatantly using my colored pencils to draw, and even made a mess of my beloved notebook. "Get up." I didn't look friendly. After I put away my tools, Scarlett didn't look good either. "I saw that you didn't put them away, so I just drew a little." Scarlett suddenly walked up to me and then took out a wrinkled toy. "Ava, this is for you. Can I discuss something with you?" "What is it?" Scarlett looked at Zachary and finally said, "Can you pay for Zachary's tuition? School has started for a long time, and he can't afford it." I saw Zachary looking at Scarlett with grateful eyes. It was the same in my previous life. Scarlett always just talked, while I was the sucker who actually did things. Zachary thought that everything I did was taken for granted, while he admired Scarlett's courage to step forward and her warmth. "So, get lost in this life. What does it have to do with me? Is my place a garbage dump? If you can't afford it, don't go to school." I coldly sat down and then stuffed the pages that Scarlett had drawn on into the trash can. Zachary's face looked very unpleasant. "Ava, do you have to be so mean? I want you to apologize to Scarlett right now." I had offended his face, but he didn't mind. It was because I dared to go against Scarlett. So easily offended? Then just stay offended and die. If it was really necessary, I wouldn't mind slapping Zachary. "Ava, don't be shameless. Scarlett is doing this for me." Zachary immediately grabbed my wrist. It was the same in my previous life. Once I did something unfriendly to Scarlett, Zachary would get angry with me at the first opportunity. "Oh, how big of a face do you have? Is it so great to be for you?" "No, Ava, that's not what we meant." Scarlett quickly came over to smooth things over, looking weak and gentle. "It's just that before, when there was a poor student in the class, you donated 100,000 yuan directly, so we came to you for help. So they just regarded me as a sucker. That person had a special illness and was dying. Are you dying too?" I questioned Zachary, and then I looked at Scarlett's wrist. "I remember this brand of watch is quite expensive. It costs 5,000 yuan. Our tuition is more than 10,000 yuan. You can take a month off and go work in a factory to earn it back, huh?" "All right, Scarlett." Justin beckoned to Scarlett and said, "I'll pay the 10,000 yuan." Scarlett's face immediately showed a look of heartache, and I found it a bit ridiculous. In my previous life, when it was my money being spent, she was quite happy and thought she had done a great deed. Unexpectedly, Zachary suddenly looked gloomy and forcibly shook off my wrist that he was holding. "I don't want Justin's money. Ava, you actually refused to give it to me. There was shock in his tone. I thought to myself, the male lead is helping you, and you don't want it. You deserve it. You just have to target me, right? On the day of the piano assessment, I ran into Zachary on the road. Zachary stopped me. Since the school would select outstanding students every month and also hold some art awards, participating in the competition would add some points for me. Ava, wait. Zachary stood in front of me looking down at me with disdain. This look was the same as in my previous life. It was never a look of taking me seriously but always one of contempt. What's the matter? In my previous life, at this time, Zachary deliberately asked me to skip class with him to ride the Ferris wheel and my heart was pounding. To have a romantic date with him, I was willing to give up anything. That day, I thought Zachary had fallen in love with me, so I held hands with him and walked to the Ferris wheel. Just then, Scarlett happily sent a message. Zachary, I finished the exam. Then I saw a warm smile on Zachary's face and he turned around and left, leaving me alone standing there. It turned out that he asked me out just to make sure I took up one less spot, so that Scarlett could win first place and get recommended for further studies with good grades in the end. Ava, let's talk. Zachary kicked the stones on the road and then said the same thing as in my previous life. I can be in a relationship with you. Today. We can get to know each other today. Talk to me in this condescending tone again, and I'll run you over. After saying that, I looked up and glared at Zachary and then I saw a slender and aloof figure. It was Ryan, the class monitor. I quickly ran over and grabbed his arm. Ryan, can we go together? Ryan hesitated for a couple of times, and then I smiled at him showing my little tiger teeth. He was silent for a moment and actually agreed. However, Zachary was still unwilling to give up and directly followed us and grabbed my wrist. He had a gloomy face. Ava, you can't go. I cooled down. I knew that the reason he was waiting here today was the same as in my previous life. Get lost. Whether I go or not has nothing to do with you. Ava, I know you like me. I'm right in front of you now. If you don't take a step forward, don't regret it later. Zachary's face was tense and he stared at me fixedly. If you go crazy again, go crazy in a mental hospital. After saying that, I looked at Ryan, who still had a calm face. At this time, he said, can we go? I nodded and left with Ryan. And at the entrance of the registration office, Scarlett was standing there with a bunch of handmade toys in her arms. She was a bit surprised when she saw me. Ava, didn't Zachary come to find you? I was amused. So the behavior mentioned above was actually acquiesced by Scarlett. No wonder. Scarlett had been keeping Zachary on the hook to get convenience for herself. After this, due to my outstanding specialty bonus points, I was finally rated as an outstanding student by the city. While Scarlett didn't make the cut and cried for many days. And I always ranked first in various evaluations and competitions, while Scarlett lost her former luster. Gradually, for some reason, Zachary started to approach me more and more often. As soon as I entered the classroom, I saw him putting milk in my drawer. Thinking about the continuous supply of milk these days, I directly threw it all into the trash can. A classmate saw this and asked, why did you throw it all away? They're all inferior products and not worthy of me. I meant something by that. Ryan, who had just walked over, had a cold look on his face and didn't move for a long time. Zachary suddenly laughed. The mole at the corner of his eye became more conspicuous as he said, classmate Ava, are you saying that what the class monitor gave is inferior? Well, he has an air of poverty about him. Naturally, he's not worthy of a young lady like you. Only then did I realize that it was actually Ryan who had been putting milk in my drawer these days. Just now, Zachary did it on purpose, deliberately making me embarrass Ryan. And Ryan turned around and left when he saw this. 05 I quickly chased after him and saw Ryan's thin back. Ryan, I didn't mean that. I didn't know it was from you. I won't give you anything anymore. Ryan lowered his eyes. I looked at his shirt that had been washed until it was faded. However, Ryan's back was still straight, his eyebrows were sparse and light, and he was tall and slender. In my previous life, I didn't have much interaction with Ryan. Only after graduation, when he accidentally learned that I didn't have a job and was unemployed at home, he recommended a job offer to me. I was a bit curious, so I raised my head and asked, Ryan, why did you give it to me? Ryan stood there for a long time without saying a word. I saw his pupils flicker. If you don't like it, I won't give it anymore. I like it. I immediately raised my hand and then took Ryan's arm. Class monitor, I didn't know it was from you just now. If I had known it was from you, I would have drunk it all up every day. The tips of Ryan's ears suddenly turned red. Ryan would become a business tycoon in the future. It wouldn't be bad to have a good relationship with him now. Back in the classroom, the next day Ryan casually and amiably handed me a bottle of milk, and I opened it and started drinking. Zachary happened to see me drinking milk as soon as he walked in after playing basketball. He didn't look very happy. Finally, he asked with contemptuous inquiry, Ava, do you like Ryan? Do you accept whatever he gives you? And Scarlett was also looking at us eagerly. Seeing that I had a good relationship with Ryan, she wasn't very happy instead. I didn't want to have any more interactions with these people at all, so I immediately nodded, of course. He's kind, considerate, and gentle. I'm willing to like him. Why don't you dislike him for being poor at this time? Zachary spoke as meanly as always. I saw that Zachary was still wearing those two school uniforms. All the warmth Scarlett gave him was just verbal concern. Zachary even had scars on his arms from previous injuries that hadn't been treated properly and left horrible marks. So Scarlett was just using love to influence him. Zachary had always been looked down upon by others and scolded. In fact, there were still quite a few hooligans who blocked him and cursed at him now. In my previous life, I protected Zachary very well. It wasn't just verbal respect but practical help. Zachary would have someone to protect him when he went home and he would have more money at hand. I took care of Zachary all over again. Loving someone is like taking care of a flower. I lowered my brows and nurtured my sweetheart. I made him less timid but he grew thorns in my greenhouse. In the end the first person he hurt was me. My piano teacher taught Zachary a piece of music and Zachary immediately went to play it for Scarlett to confess his love to her. Zachary dressed fashionably at that time with a look of freedom and confidence in his eyes. He lowered his head and eyes with a cold and lazy air in his bones and a cold tone. Many young girls liked him. He told me that he wanted a guitar so I bought one for him and engraved our names on it. And on the school art festival day he played a love song for Scarlett which caused a sensation in the whole school and even became a hot topic on the internet spreading on short videos. Many people envied Scarlett. Compared to me Zachary's love for her was so obvious. I proposed to break up with him for the first time. To persuade me to stay Zachary said, I'll play for you sooner or later. Are you jealous of Scarlett now? I've never seen anyone as petty as you. She's very important to me. If you can't accept her, we can never be together. And the current Zachary was actually no different from those hooligans. I had no interest in him at all. Scarlett soon lost interest in Zachary because being nice to Zachary couldn't enhance her charm and was worthless. 06 Soon it was Justin's birthday. Scarlett put on a beautiful dress and prepared to go to Justin's birthday party but she didn't take Zachary with her. As my family had a good relationship with Justin's family in the previous generation I naturally attended the banquet. One could bring a companion to the dinner party. This time I chose Ryan. While Ryan was packing his things I took his hand and said, Ryan, come with me to the banquet as my male companion. Ryan stared at me. Just when I was about to give up he agreed. I had a suit customized for Ryan. After he put it on he looked noble and his excellent bone structure and refined temperament were even more prominent. I wore a red dress and stood in front of him and exclaimed, Ryan, you look so handsome. Ryan lowered his eyes and then suddenly raised them. He was cold and silent. His face was as white as jade, his eyes were serious and pious and he held my palm. Since you said these words, I'll take it as your approval. Ava, if you're nice to me, I'll hold on to you and never let go. Ryan suddenly approached me and touched my shoulder. Then I walked in hand with him. During the conversation among the elders my father took me to talk to Justin and then my father talked to Mr. Shing about the certificates I had obtained now. Not only Mr. Shing but even Justin looked at me differently from before. Because in my previous life all my energy was spent on chasing Zachary which made my father attach more and more importance to Zachary. He gave all the resources to Zachary and even regarded Zachary as his own child. He hoped that Zachary could support our enterprise and be a good son-in-law who would be nice to me. Now I'm going to use my own strength to let my father know that I'm also excellent. And if choosing a son-in-law I won't be so blind in this life. I saw that my father looked at Ryan several times with admiration in his eyes. On the way back after attending the dinner party Ryan and I were sitting in the car, and Zachary was standing outside the Shing family's gate looking eagerly inside. Unfortunately it was like a huge gap that he couldn't cross. Even more ridiculously Justin didn't let him in at all. The next day at school Zachary had many more injuries. It was said that he owed a lot of money to loan sharks. Because he didn't have money and there was a mentally ill person in his family who often came to the school to make trouble. When Zachary's mentally ill mother ran into the school again Zachary was pulled tightly by her. The mentally ill mother cursed obscenely and then hugged her son. Come back home with mom, come back home with mom. You're a bastard. Let's go see dad together. Zachary's face looked extremely unpleasant. And Scarlett covered her nose with a look of disgust and muttered, Good heavens, why does she smell like manure? Scarlett left Zachary in disgust. However Zachary's mentally ill mother directly grabbed Scarlett's hair. You little slut. Did you seduce my son? My son won't go home with me because you, this little vixen, seduced him. I'll beat you to death. Scarlett finally couldn't help crying and losing her composure in front of everyone. Zachary, make your crazy mother go away. What's the use of you? Old woman, can you get lost? I don't like your son. And Zachary's blood seemed to turn cold all over his body and he trembled. I watched them fighting with each other. How absurd it was. In my previous life I helped Zachary send his mother to a mental hospital so that someone could take good care of her and she could also avoid being cursed and hurt by the villagers. I also donated a sum of money to the mental hospital. All of these were nothing compared to what Scarlett did. She just took Zachary's hand and said, "Zachary, I think there's something wrong with your mother. Why don't we send her to a mental hospital?" With just one casual sentence from her, all the credit went to her. And Zachary was still grateful. Regarding my contribution, he just said, "Don't you just have some stinking money?" It was Scarlett who thought of this carefully in the first place. Alright, can't I just not care in this life? 07 The incident of Zachary being pulled by the mentally ill person quickly spread all over the campus. People at this age are naturally sensitive and there are inevitably some mean people. Oh my god, he usually acts so arrogantly. So his biological mother is mentally ill. He's still pretending all the time. Do you think mental illness can be inherited? Could it be that the son of a mentally ill person is also mentally ill? I heard that Zachary's father was injured by his mother. How scary. We should stay away from him. There were more and more similar rumors and Zachary was clearly isolated. Scarlett didn't help Zachary like before this time. Because Zachary still owed debts and Justin didn't like to associate with such a person, Ava. When Zachary came to our classroom, the troublemaker in the class suddenly said, "Hey, isn't this the fatherless guy? I heard he was beaten up a couple of days ago." Zachary's face turned pale. Finally, he endured it and pressed on my desk and said, "Can we get to know each other again? I know you must have had some good feelings for me when you first met me. Can you fall in love with me again? Can we be together nicely?" Looking at the somewhat crazy and anxious Zachary, this was actually his fate originally. "Could you please stop pestering me?" I shook off Zachary, but Zachary pressed my shoulder firmly. "I know you're unhappy that I've always liked Scarlett, but now I can like you. As long as we're good together." Zachary had injuries on his shoulders and at the corners of his mouth. How could he be so embarrassed? I was curious. Without any confidence, how dare he act recklessly? "Zachary, please recognize your position. And I don't like you. Please don't disturb me anymore." After hearing this, his face actually showed melancholy and sadness, and his pupils showed disbelief. "Ava, how could you be so heartless?" I know you're very soft-hearted." Zachary frowned. He really looked like a poor little thing now. "I didn't treat you well at the beginning. Could you please feel sorry for me? Can you save me? The people outside beat me so painfully. I'm so uncomfortable." Zachary took out a toy pendant from his pocket and handed it to me. "This is specially bought by me for you. Ava, could you love me a little? I can't live without you." Zachary frowned his thick eyebrows. I felt a dull pain in my heart too. After all, in my previous life, his face had been deeply engraved in my mind, his every smile and every frown were too hard to forget. However, I looked at that cheap blue fatty doll pendant. Zachary felt so sorry for Scarlett. In my previous life, with the help of my good fortune, he made a little money and put all of it into Scarlett's bank card. He didn't keep a penny for himself. On festivals, other girls would receive gifts, but he didn't give me anything. I told him if he could give me something. It was on that occasion that he casually gave me a pendant. But I was happy for a long time. "Ava, look how easily you could be coaxed." In fact, the thing in his hand was really cheap. "What are you doing?" A clear voice pulled me back, and I suddenly bumped into a warm embrace. It was Ryan. Ryan's fingers with distinct joints protected me and glared angrily at Zachary, his face tense and cold. "If you want to go crazy somewhere else. Don't touch her. What right do you have to challenge me? Do you know her well? Do you know her as well as I do? She'll never like you in her life." Zachary ground his teeth and a fierce expression appeared on his face. "Ryan, do you know what you are? You're just a second-choice substitute. As long as I'm nice to her again, she'll definitely look at me. We're meant to be together. Stop flattering yourself. When did I say I liked you?" I retorted. Finally, Zachary looked at me and showed his injured wrist. "Ava, please. Could you touch me? Just take pity on me." Thinking of the immoral things he did to me in my previous life, I was extremely regretful. Zachary's expression was like that of a puppy as he tugged at the corner of my clothes. His expression was pitiful, but I knew all of these were his disguises. Only in front of me could he show his most perfect posture and hit my weak points. However, in front of Scarlett, he was truly in love and at a loss. "I won't take the trash that others don't want here. Get out of here." I grabbed Ryan's wrist with my backhand and showed it to Zachary. "Moreover, I've already made my choice about who I like and care about, and it's him." I saw Ryan's body tremble a little. Finally, he whispered in my ear, "Are you serious?" I immediately intertwined my fingers with his. Zachary tore off his disguise and then said angrily, "Ava, don't think I don't know. That painting was drawn by you in the first place. Do you think you're so great? You liked me before. Who are you playing hard to get for now?" She saw a glint of gold before and had a good impression, but when she got closer, it turned out to be just gilded junk. Can't she turn away when she smells something bad? Ryan put his hand on the back of my neck and looked at Zachary coldly. You look so ridiculous when you're so worked up, and the way you keep pestering is disgusting. Ryan showed a look of disgust and stared at him coldly. I murmured softly, Ryan, you're so nice. And Zachary took a few steps back and looked at me in disbelief. You don't like me anymore? Zachary's face suddenly turned pale. And Ryan, as if declaring his sovereignty, said to Zachary, don't come to Ava again, or don't blame me for being rude. That ceramic doll pendant was directly thrown on the ground and shattered into pieces. Ryan would do some programming in his free time. In my previous life, he was a big shot in the internet industry. So I directly gave Ryan a sum of money. My dad heard that you're really good and insisted that I invest in you. With the wind at your back, why don't I give you a boost now? Moreover, based on what I knew in my previous life, Ryan was definitely an extremely good man. Rebirth was like having a clairvoyant eye. Ryan and I built a website, and soon, with my vision and Ryan's skills, surprisingly, it started to make a profit 3 months later. Although it wasn't much, it was still a huge achievement. However, at this time, Scarlett actually came to me. Ava, Zachary is in a bad way. You should go and see him. He was beaten up terribly by those people outside the school. You had a good relationship with him. Why don't you go and help him? Scarlett was left speechless and hesitated for a moment. I don't have the ability. I can only come to you for help. After all, you were kind of our friend once. When Justin took you for a ride, why didn't you say I was your friend? You only come to me when there's trouble. Zachary was close to you, not me. I ignored Scarlett. Zachary likes you. Are you really not going to see him? I don't believe you don't know that he liked you back then. I directly interrupted the conversation. Ava, why have you become so mean? You're not even willing to do something that's as easy as lifting a finger. You'll just lose a bit of money, but Zachary might lose his life. Could you please stop with this moral blackmail? If you're so good at talking, why don't you talk to those loan sharks? What's the point of bullying me? Do I owe the money? Do I deserve to pay off his debts for him? Scarlett gritted her teeth in anger. Besides, don't you still have your brother Justin? Why don't you go to him? Scarlett saw that I was unwilling and left crying. In my previous life, when I needed a special medicine, Scarlett just refused to take it out. She watched me getting sick and becoming weaker and weaker. Scarlett was short of money, and Zachary directly gave her half of my family's property. It even made the news in the newspapers at that time. Zachary was extremely affectionate. He filled the ferry with flowers and candles and even arranged words in the sky with an airplane. The lighthouse in the distance was shining to bless Scarlett's birthday. The wonderful and dreamy scene made Justin feel even more threatened. Scarlett directly became a wealthy woman. That was half of the entire family property, which was the painstaking effort of my father for most of his life. When I went to ask for it back, Zachary got so angry that he pushed me onto the bed and said it was a debt between husband and wife. Whenever I thought of these things, I would tremble with anger. Scarlett seemed kind on the surface, but she was actually an egoist. After getting the money, she invested in herself and finally established the image of a single, strong woman, implying that I was a pampered wife, a useless housewife. Ava, Zachary doesn't love you. Are you feeling very bad? Well, for men, just endure it. Look, Justin hurt me before, but now he knows he's wrong and is chasing me. Women should still have their own careers. Thinking of Scarlett's hypocritical words, I became even angrier. In the class, Scarlett deliberately formed cliques and gave me dirty looks. She spread rumors that I was cold-blooded. Zachary didn't look well. The next day, I heard that someone intercepted Scarlett on the road she usually took and taught her a lesson. When I heard the news, I even shared it with Ryan. She's finally been beaten up. I've disliked her for a long time. Ryan suddenly smiled and then patted the back of my head. Yeah. Ryan and I started to study hard and dominated the rankings throughout the year. When it was time to graduate, Zachary didn't come. I also heard that because of a lot of debts, he got into trouble. I couldn't calm down for a long time. To be honest, Zachary's grades weren't that outstanding, but they weren't too bad either. But now, there was already a huge gap before he even graduated. I didn't pay attention to him anymore. Instead, Ryan and I were recommended for further studies and were ready to strive for even better achievements. On the graduation cruise ship, Ryan and I were planning to travel to other places. Surprisingly, Justin and Scarlett also got tickets for this ship. Ryan and I immediately changed to another floor, mainly because we didn't want to see them again. And Zachary was also playing the piano on this cruise ship. Because of his good looks and his state of mind, the music he played was even more mournful, and quite a few people came to appreciate it. Unfortunately, I felt unlucky when I saw him. Zachary often looked over at me, his eyes full of sadness and scrutiny. I just stopped going to that area. There was a dance party on the cruise ship, and I happened to draw the lot to dance with the pianist. In my previous life, Zachary manipulated things behind the scenes to dance with Scarlett, but this time it happened to be me. Zachary's eyes were fixed on me, looking deep. I felt a lump in my heart and just threw the lot away. I'm not dancing. Just when I was about to enjoy the view on the deck, suddenly someone hugged me from behind. Ryan? I was stunned for a moment, and my voice was tinged with a smile. It's me. Zachary's voice was dull as he pressed against my cheek and asked. Are you not satisfied that it's me? Why are you shaking? It was Zachary. He actually came here too. Suddenly, he put a knife against the back of my neck. Ava, why have you changed? His face was close to mine, and I could feel his chaotic breathing. And his little finger was missing. Why don't you love me anymore? Zachary became even gloomier and more terrifying than when I first met him. Why are you so rational now? Could it be that you've been reborn? My heart skipped a beat. Zachary had also been reborn. No wonder he was so angry and confused when I didn't fall for his tricks. In his heart, I was supposed to be someone who would put up with anything from him. What are you doing? Are you so stimulated that you've gone crazy? Ava, whether you've been reborn or not, I think you have to die. My life has become like this all because of you, Zachary murmured. It's all your fault. Why didn't you take good care of me again? You were the one who indulged me the most. And now I really wanted to kick Zachary to death, blaming everything on me. He's the one with a mess in his life, but he's blaming me instead. I said seriously, I've never influenced your life. Even in my previous life, although I gave him extremely good resources, he still messed things up in the end. And it was I who turned the situation around because my family had enough resources to bear the losses. Now, if you don't help me, it's like ruining me. Why did you fall in love with someone else? You're mine. I just want you to be mine. He became more and more crazy, his voice trembling and hoarse. Why aren't you as stupid as before? Scarlett is with someone else now. I can't turn the situation around. How about we die together? Let's die together. I'll give you a chance. Tell me if you like me or not. If you don't like me, then I'll have to let you die. Zachary raised the knife and was about to stab me. At this critical moment, Ryan immediately picked me up from behind. He kicked Zachary directly onto the deck. Ryan. And Ryan looked at me with concern and asked worriedly, are you hurt? I shook my head. As long as Ryan was here, it was okay. I held onto him tightly. At this time, Zachary got up crazily and ran towards us. Suddenly, there were some rioters on the ship. A man in black rushed straight towards Scarlett's room. Zachary hesitated for a moment. He no longer chose to take revenge on us. Instead, he ran in the direction of Scarlett. He wanted to save Scarlett. He held Scarlett's shoulders to protect her. No matter when, Scarlett was always the first in Zachary's heart. When the assailants rushed over, Ryan protected me in front of me. He fought against 5 people by himself and was dragged away forcefully. Ava. However, just to the left front, someone actually had their eye on me. When the knife stabbed in, I turned around to look. It was Zachary. 10 this time, Zachary didn't block the knife for Scarlett but ran towards me instead. You. There was disbelief in my eyes. Zachary suddenly grabbed my wrist and leaned close to my ear. He widened his eyes, also looking reluctant. Finally, he wanted to touch my face with his hand, but he didn't touch it. Ridiculous. I can't believe I'm blocking the knife for you. Bloodshot appeared in Zachary's eyes. He covered his chest. Ava, I know you've been reborn. Because in the previous life, you couldn't bear to see me suffer the slightest grievance. Every time I showed weakness, you would forgive me. You loved me. You fell in love with me at first sight, right? I'm certain of it. In the previous life, only you truly loved me. Why don't you love me now? Blood slowly oozed from the corner of Zachary's mouth. I know I didn't do well and you don't tolerate me anymore. Why does my heart feel so empty? When the sea breeze blew, he said, compared to Scarlett, I want you more in this life. It turned out that you were the light that truly pitted me. Zachary looked at me sadly and suddenly kissed my palm. Finally, he sank into the sea. My heart couldn't stop trembling. The teenager I once loved deeply died here again. Ava, I'm sorry about the baby. Zachary said his confession as if crying. It turned out that he remembered. He remembered that we had an unborn baby in our previous life. I covered my lips, shed tears, and turned around to look for Ryan. On the deck, Justin actually pushed Scarlett into the sea by choking her neck this time. How boring. Why aren't you being chased by others anymore? He held a gun against Scarlett's head, looking carefree. Then you're completely worthless. I don't like women like you. Justin had no expression on his face and pulled the trigger. It turned out that he had also been reborn and remembered all of Scarlett's duplicitous crimes. I was trembling behind the room. Suddenly, there was a vibration in my pocket. It was actually a tracker. Justin walked towards me. It turned out that Justin was also a crazy one. Miss Ava, would you like to play with me? He raised his eyebrows. And Ryan ran out for me, bleeding a lot. He fought with the assailants in the room and broke free to protect me. Don't touch Ava. You're here too? Anyway, you'll be a threat to me in the future. I've wanted you dead for a long time. Ryan protected my head and got into a physical fight with Justin. I picked up the iron rod around me and directly helped Ryan. finally, Justin fell into the bottom of the sea. Then I quickly called the police. When Ryan woke up in the hospital ward, I was standing beside his bed. The view outside the window was clear. He held my hand and said, "Ava, it's good that you're here.